Welcome to your very first episode of On the Mic with Eddie. I am your host, Eddie, and you're going to be on the mic with me. Today, I have a really special friend on today, a good, great, amazing artist, and I wanted to have him on. He helped me out with the logo for On the Mic, uh, very just how I like it. And please say hello to Joe. Joe, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to hang out with me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. Now I can. I think my headphones weren't connected.
All right, man. Well, I want to first thank you for helping me out with the logo. I know I was a kind of a pain in the ass, and I wanted simple things, and I didn't know what I wanted exactly. And I'm sure probably in your industry you're used to something like that.
I wouldn't say you were a pain in the ass. I mean, I've dealt with
Any more than usual,
the
right?
no man. I've dealt with people that they'll hire you to do a job, and then you lay out the guidelines and the specs, and then halfway through they're like, hey, can we add this, and that? And you're like, that's not part of the plan. They're like, yeah, I know, but just add it anyways. Um, no, I mean, you kind of went the opposite way where you asked me to do less than I wanted to do because I think I sent you one that had like sound waves or something,
Yeah, yeah,
and
you
I
definitely did.
I like that one. I like that one way more, and like I think I sent it to you, but when you send stuff off like that, you try not to uh, include your opinion. You don't want to be like, I like this one first. You go, hey, here are the options. What do you think? And then if they say, well, I like this one, then you can chime in and go, yeah, yeah, okay, me too. But you like the one that I was like, oh, okay, you know. But I mean, it's your artwork, man. You do whatever you want.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you
so I
you
mean,
went the opposite way.
yeah, wait. You were
Yeah.
stoked about that Soundwave one, and you were just like, "Hey, this is the one I want." And I mean, you didn't tell me that, but I was definitely, you know, choosing one on, and I just it's just a simplicity for me. But I wanted your magic touch, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's your thing. So whatever you want it to look like, I mean, you try not to get too attached um, when you do things because I mean, people obviously come to you for a reason. It's because they may be able to picture it, but they can't execute it. And then if you start putting your own opinion and getting attached to it and saying like, oh, well, I like this one, it's just it's pointless. Like at the end of the day, I guess if you can get the same amount of money and they want less from you, I guess it's really not a bad thing. So,
Well,
whatever.
I mean, how did you? I mean, a lot of the questions I'm gonna ask you, I kind of already know the answers to because I mean, we've been friends for, close to 12 years now.
Mhm.
I mean, we met at a previous job, and you were in the art design department. I was in the back house doing the shipping and receiving. We won't talk about who they were or what that's all about, but fuck
Don't
them.
give them that
But
shine.
exactly. But I mean, how did you begin to do? How did you decide this is what I want to do for a living? How did that start? I know it started way back when you were still a child.
Uh, it actually didn't start when I was a child because for me, it was always just something to do, to pass the time. Like we used to move a lot and, you have to start a new school and make new friends and stuff like that. So, I always was drawn to comic books and stuff like that. And it just sort of became like, oh, wait a minute, people create those things. You know what I mean? Like somebody created those characters. So why can't I do it? And then it was just something to do when I was a kid. And it never really dawned on me that you could like make a living off of it until I was probably in like high school, because when you're a kid and you tell people like, oh, I want to make comic books or I want to do whatever, they're like, there's no money in that, which is funny because, look at, Walt Disney or, whatever. It's like, there's a lot of money in that. You just have to be persistent. You have to be good. But I actually wanted to be a forensic, either pathologist or, part of me wanted to be like a detective, just shit like that. And I started going to school for criminology. And then when I realized how long it would take me, I was like, fuck that. So it just became more. So basically they switched. It was like art was a hobby. And then, I wanted to do criminology or whatever. And then when I realized, I was like, no, I just kind of switched their places. And art became a job. And then, criminology or whatever you want to call it became kind of a hobby, or some would call it an obsession.
Is that why you're a big fan of like Dexter, for example, when that was on? You think you were pretty involved in that, if I recall?
Yeah, I mean that's basically kind of what I mean. He was a blood spatter analyst, which is in that field, but I enjoyed the juxtaposition of a guy that works for the police department but is also a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like when they would talk about blood slides and how he would, take souvenirs from each of his killings, I was like, oh, it's so true. It's so up there, but I love that shit.
Well, I mean, I know, how do I say this? How did you become from working your day by day job to going finally saying, F this, I'm sick and tired of freaking working for somebody and telling me what to do, how to do it, and critiquing me, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to be my own boss. Because I think there are a lot of artists out there who are trying to get to that point. A lot of artists who are at that point, you included, but there's still a lot of people that are still trying to figure out how to get to that point that not necessarily you're at, but maybe where you were at 10 years ago.
I mean, when you're a creative person, the last thing on earth you want to do is have somebody with less creativity tell you what to do or tell you how to use your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's kind of where I found myself in a lot of jobs that I had. Was like, you go into what's called production art, which is basically where you just create, random bullshit that people can use over and over. So like you create a flower and then that you upload it and people can use that on vectors or whatever. And I just found myself working, but I mean, like I lied to get my first design job because I had an illustration background. I didn't have a design background. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And I didn't know shit. And I had to teach myself Photoshop and Illustrator. And at the time, it was with those big ass Adobe books. There was no YouTube. There was no nothing. It was like
It's like the
thick Adobe
3-inch.
books. Yep.
Yeah. I know what you're talking
I remember
about.
reading them front to back. And I got like a bootleg version of each software. And I just kind of taught myself. And the guy that gave me the job found out, and he was pretty cool about it. He's like, I'll give you a month. And if you can't figure it out in a month, then you got to go. And then I just kind of floated around. And every time I got a job, I tried to kind of, even if I got fired, I tried to fail upwards. Like, all right, well, I worked at this place and I didn't, whatever. I got fired or I quit or let go or whatever. The next place I go has to be even 1% better.
Correct.
And I worked at the LA Times, like.
What'd you do at the LA Times?
So the LA Times, I did a lot of like creative. I wouldn't call it creative. It was similar to production art, like it was forgot the actual term, but it was like you would create certain things like for like a book fair, I want an octopus and I remember this one book fair that we did had an octopus, and it was holding books, and it was underwater and this and this and that. And that was about the most creative thing that we were able to do. The rest of it was like cars and shit like that. And it was a graveyard shift too. And, it wasn't the best, but after that, I had tried to be my own boss a couple of times and I couldn't make it work for whatever reason. And then when we worked at the place that shall not be named,
Yes.
I had always, I remember when I first applied there, he's like, we both know who we're talking about. He's like,
we'll call him Bob. We'll call him Bob for this person.
Let's call him Dave.
Let's call him Dave. All right, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So Dave was like, yeah, we already filled the position, but we'd like to bring you on as like a contractor. And I'm like, okay. And they would give me all kinds of those DVD covers and shit to work on. I would just do it at home. And they actually paid me pretty well, at first. And I was like, this is great. I mean, I get to work at home. I think I had to go in like 2 times a week and just sit down and show them what I did. And it wasn't until he was like, okay, we'd like to bring you on full time, where I was like, what's the upside to this? Like why? And I don't know if you remember, but we didn't get health benefits. So I was kind of like, what's the point really? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm working for myself, basically at home, I get to do your projects and I get to do my own. Anyways, long story short, I got fed up with that place, and I told myself, like, I've only got, this much talent in me, and I'm not going to let this asshole who's got that much tell me how to use it.
I mean, and we separated employment literally, I want to say about almost a month or so apart. I was gone in July, and I want to say you were gone in like August, correct?
August 4th.
July 4th.
2009.
The weekend before July 4th, because I remember July 4th, Independence Day landed on a weekend, and we're going into, we'll call them Jake and Dave's office. And they gave me the spiel, and I walked out of there on a Friday evening and never looked back, ever.
Yeah, I remember, I forgot. Oh, he brought up I had a blog at the time, a Blogspot, and I had done this drawing of myself, and it was kind of in that, remember that band Gorillaz?
Yes.
It was kind of in that style with like the black eyeballs and the white pupils and shit. And I had done a drawing of myself where I was holding a pencil, full head of hair and like a goatee. And Dave brings it over to me and he's like, so you're using company time to draw your fellow employees? And I'm like, what? And he's like, he puts the picture down all sly. And I'm like, who is that? And he's like, Jose. And I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. So he's got dark hair, wears glasses, and has facial hair, and that's Jose. And I was looking at him, and you could tell that exact moment. He's like, oh, well, anyways, besides the point, And he said something like I tried to claim credit for his work, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I do all the art. You do most of the photography. I did some of that too. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, so-and-so said you submitted a resume to them. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, because I don't want to work here anymore. And he's like, well, you're fired. I'm like, okay, I quit. Whatever. Like, whatever you want to call it. Tomato. And he's like, we'll let you finish up the week. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. And I mean, at that time I was kind of shitting bricks because I had just bought a brand new desktop, and I was doing more stuff at home, and uh, I kind of got thrust into it, and it was like sink or swim, and I have never. I mean, that was August 4th, 2009, and we're on what, September 29th?
30th, September 30th
30th.
today.
Is it the
September
30th?
30th. Yes, tomorrow's the 1st of October.
Shit, it is. Okay, so we're on September 30th, 2020. So it's been well over 11 years, and I've never gone back. And I swore to myself I would never put myself in that situation again. Like I'd rather be broke.
So essentially, they had something to do with a little part of you getting out of the working for someone rather than just working for yourself. I mean, technically, I mean you are working for a client, but you're your own job. You set your own hours. You do your own thing, which must be fucking amazing.
See, no, not really, because I was talking to a friend today that he relocated from Florida to Texas to work for eBay, right? And given the COVID situation, it's an at-home job, and they live in a nice apartment, and he's like, "Man, I'm going crazy right now working from home. I feel so unproductive," you know. And I was talking to him, and I'm like, "It's funny, man. Like I've been doing this for over a decade, and if I had a nickel for every time I've heard somebody tell me like, oh, you must be nice, or you're so lucky, like I'd be wealthy." And I'm like, everybody says that shit until they try to do it. And what they don't understand is it fucks with your head, you know, because you and I went from working in offices or warehouses or whatever with other employees, and I went from that to being alone completely.
Well, technically, not alone, right? Because you got some companions.
Well,
About 7 now, right? If I'm not mistaken.
no, I have 9 now.
Nine, correct.
Well, I mean, at the time, I had 2 roommates, but they went and worked, right? And then, of course, I had my pets, but, you have no structure, you have no interaction, and it fucked with me for probably 2 years, close to 2
Yeah.
years. And I remember telling myself, like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And now, dude, you couldn't pay me enough money to go work in an office. COVID aside.
Yeah. I think another part, and I remember you mentioned it before, was it's not only that, but I mean, when you have a job, when you're working for somebody, you have a steady paycheck. And when you're doing the freelance thing, you got to think, okay, where's the rent going to come from? How I got to get that to now, the rent, the electricity, the food,
Oh yeah.
everything, the car payment, it's not a steady, not like you got, okay, well, I know that on Friday I got, 13, 14, $1,500, whatever it is. Cause in this case, you got to wait for that person to commission you. Correct.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the age-old thing, like when it rains it pours, and when it's good, it's real good. I mean, if you have been in it for a while and you know how to price yourself, you can make quite a bit of money. Like there for, a number of years, I made more money doing freelance or working for myself than I ever did any 9 to 5 job. And I'm talking like double pay or even triple sometimes. And but I'm not like a lot of people. What they do is they work a 9 to 5, but they have the freelance on the side, and then they kind of gradually, they phase into the other one. I'm not really like I don't have that kind of brain. I just kind of go. It's the same thing with like if I stop drinking, I don't. Well, I'm gonna drink one less beer today. I just stop. So with freelance, it was like I just got to do it. I can't dip my toe in because if I dip my toe in, I might think, oh, it's too cold. Whereas if I have to make the rent, you got to make some shit happen,
Either
and
jump in or you don't.
you sink or swim,
Yeah.
and you find out how deep that pool is real quick. And I've heard, I trust me, I've heard the whole like, oh, it must be nice to work from home, and I'm like, you would think. But you have to be like, dude, you got to create your own structure. You got to create your own, your own guidelines, your own rules, your own this, your own that, your own budget. I mean, you have to wear multiple hats. And a lot of people with COVID, I mean, they're learning that because they have to be home. And a lot of people are having a hard time with it. And when it first went down, I was like, man, I'm conditioned for this. Like, this is just every other day for me.
I've been quarantined this entire time since 2009.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but like the things that I did enjoy, like going to the movies or going to a coffee shop or whatever, I mean, those are gone, and that kind of screws with me a little bit because it's like the 20% that I used to spend out is taken away from me. So now it's like 95% in, but I've been conditioned, for quite a few years to kind of deal with that. So
It wasn't such a harsh transition like a lot of people around the world where they were going to 9 to 5s, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, go home, stay home, don't come out, stay away from people, 6 feet apart, wash your hands daily, you know, things like that.
yeah, no, I mean, you've been to my house. Like, I keep a pretty clean house, and like, I'm pretty neurotic about wiping things down, and so like, it really wasn't that big of a change. Like, I never wiped my groceries down before COVID, but I would wipe off handles and keyboards and shit like that pretty meticulously. And when everything locked down, it really wasn't that big of a shock to me. Um, a lot of people I know had a hard time with it. And I remember telling quite a few people, like, if you're gonna work at home, don't work in your bedroom. Don't do this, don't do that. Create a schedule, get up and put some clothes on that aren't pajamas.
Keep
You
that
know?
normalcy, or try to keep that normalcy a little bit there. You know, if you usually go to work at 9 a.m., be at your desk at 9 a.m., wherever you're going to work, in order for you to keep that sanity, there.
Yeah,
Um,
you got to
I-
create because a lot of people need the structure given to them. Here are your hours. Here's where your lunch is. Here's when you get paid. Go. And then when it's kind of like now you got to make that up yourself, that's when they panic.
Not only that, too, I mean, like, I didn't have to experience that. Like, I work in an industry where I still had to go to work. I still work my same hours, same days. You know, the more crazier part was having to come home and make myself sanitize, make sure I'm clean, make sure I'm not endangering my family at home. Uh, Emily, my 5-year old, soon to be 5-year old, Jessica, and that's the thing. And her parents, because we live here, her parents are older, and got to make sure I take care of it, and it's more of her, and we all have underlying conditions from diabetes to asthma to older age. So
Yeah.
and it's just one of those things where I was like, that for me was the crazier part. And you spoke about wiping down the groceries. I remember when I first went to a grocery store during the quarantine, it was like, okay, get the stuff, get the spray ready, disinfect it, wipe it down, bring it in. It was like this whole like assembly line type thing. And I mean, there's been a few times where at work, we've had people who tested positive for COVID, and I make that phone call, hey, to Jessica, and be like, hey, so someone tested positive. I gotta go test myself now, just to be on the safe side. Make sure to clean up all the sheets from the bed. Take everything we touched in the last 2-3 days. Just wipe it down, clean it, and it's one of those crazy things.
Yeah, I mean I remember going to Target. I moved in February. I moved February 7th, 2020 from Santa Ana to Rancho Santa Margarita. And I didn't really know the area too well, but I knew where a couple things were. And things closed down, I think like March 13th or around there. I remember going to Target and getting like whatever supplies on like a Thursday and then going like a week and a half later. and being told I had to wear a mask and I had to wait in line, and you were handed things, and and it was such like a whoa, and you couldn't find certain things, and that was a change because I mean, you're just not used to it. Even like this past weekend, we went to downtown Disney. By far the strangest experience that I've had during COVID. It's it was something I don't have any plans to do in the immediate future again. Like
I've heard that's like lines everywhere to get anywhere. It's like Disneyland Park all over again, but it's like these lines to get into a store, lines to
yep.
get into a restaurant, lines to get into, well, that's the only thing that's open, so restaurants and stores. I've heard about it and I've seen photos, but speaking of downtown Disney, I saw your photo,
It was crazy. I mean, we were like, yeah, let's go like at 10. They open at 10. Let's leave the house at 9. It'll be kind of like a mom and dad day out of the house for a couple hours. And it takes us about 40 minutes to get there from where, this place we're at. And, we're like, okay, cool. And then we drive up to the Simba parking lot, which is behind Paradise Pier,
Yes.
and they're closed. And he goes, yeah, we just, we're at maximum occupancy. And I'm like, are you serious? And he goes, just drive around, just drive around. So we drove around again. They closed off right before we got there. Drove around again, closed off. Drove around the last time, and they finally let us in. And you have to walk, but as you walk, I mean, they seriously enforce the 6-foot distance. They have a dog sniff you. They check your bag. Everybody's behind glass shields. You have to wear a mask. You cannot pull it below your nose. I mean, you could pull it up for a second or to drink something, but if you have it down consistently, they'll ask you to leave. And
Yeah.
we're walking towards the shops by the ESPN zone or wherever that used to be, and they had that Chadwick Boseman mural, and that's kind of the only reason I wanted to go was to see it. And it's awesome, and there was nobody there.
So where do they put it at? You said by the ESPN zone on the side where
the ESPN zone is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the side that faces the sandwich shop.
Okay,
like
okay.
on that corner.
Got it. Okay, so not the one facing where Rainforest Cafe was, right?
No.
Okay, so the other around the corner.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's right there. It's awesome. He's got like a little, paragraph that he wrote. And so we're like, let's go look at some shops. Maybe they have some Halloween stuff or whatever. Just kill time. And they announce that, okay, now we've hit maximum occupancy. So now we're doing a mobile queue. So you have to go out into the store, put your name and your phone number down, and we'll text you when you can come into the store. And we put our name and number down for 2 stores. And we ended up waiting an hour and a half.
Ouch. What stores were they?
The World of Disney, that big ass Disney store,
Okay.
and like the Disney Home store, which basically had the same shit. But every store, I'm talking like the bakery, the candy shop, the restaurants, it was probably at least an hour. So in effect, you got the line experience from Disneyland. You just didn't get the rides.
Right? You went in to spend money instead of getting a ride there.
Yeah, and it was, dude, I mean, when you sit down on those little benches, they have 6 feet blocked off. Do not sit here. You know what I mean? Like, and when you're in line, they have people watching you going, can you back up, please? Can you back up? Like, can you not get so close? You have to wear a mask the entire time you're there. It was like,
how would they do that with like groups? Like, let's say you're with a group of 7.
You have to stand side by side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't even group up like a clump.
No.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
It's weird, man. I mean, we heard all the Disney songs playing, and there's a party that's like, oh, this is familiar. Like it's something, but I'm like, I think I'm good. I think I'm all set.
I mean, I just saw on the news. I don't know if you saw. I'm sure you did, but they made an announcement, Disneyland, that they're about to lay off. I want to say 28,000 employees from Disneyland. So, I
You're
mean,
gonna have
obviously
Disney
that's
World
multiple
and corporate.
Disney World and corporate.
Yeah, so it's going to be Disneyland, Disney World, and some executive like corporate jobs as well.
That's that's rough. I mean, it sucks for those employees. I mean, it's crazy. You think about it because they've. I mean, a lot of them probably have been furloughed though, right? I mean, because they were
Yeah.
on furlough for some time. Um, and that's just. I mean, that's just crazy.
Well,
And
I know that they like we were talking to one of the employees there, and they were like, "Man, like the higher ups at Disney have been trying to appeal to the governor." I don't know if you read that article where they said that they were releasing or laying off people. They kind of take a dig. They're like, "Because the government, the local government, won't let us," and they're
yeah,
like, they're trying to get the park back open because Disney World in Florida is open. I think at 30% capacity, but Florida
25. I want to say.
so Florida isn't the benchmark for anything, but
Yeah,
at
it's
least
it
they're
should be
making some money.
example.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. Florida's gross, but um, I didn't think it would open up this year. I'm starting to believe that they'll be open for the holidays.
They've been pushing it back. I heard September, then I heard October, and then October got canceled, and then I mean I'm here November, December, but I I mean this coronavirus, COVID-19, it's supposed to kind of re-spark during the cold season.
The flu,
So
flu season.
exactly. So I mean, I don't know how realistic that may be. I mean, yeah, I would love to. I mean, it sucks, Emily wants to go to the parks, and I would love to go to the parks too, and you know, do absolutely nothing, just walk around and just go wherever Emily wants to go. But
The thing is, though, you guys would all have to wear masks, and I don't know that she would want to do that all day.
surprisingly, I mean, we've had to go a couple times with her to go, like for example, grocery shop. I know grocery shopping is 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops, versus spending a whole entire day with a mask.
Mhm.
But during the time, she's really good about putting her mask. But then, like I said, I don't know how good she would be with keeping that mask on the entire time we're there. Obviously, except drinking, eating, your meals, and stuff like that. But I mean, I had to go to Marina Del Rey on Tuesday and to open and to go see a new client out there, and I have a mask on from 10 a.m. till I left around 1, and it was just I was dying. Like I just I went to my car, took it off so I can breathe.
Yeah, I read somebody said that like taking your mask off after shopping is like the equivalent of when women take their bra off when they get home from work. That kind of like freeing sensation. I mean, obviously, I don't know what that feels like,
Yeah,
but
I would have to ask.
when, when you go to the grocery store for a half hour, 45 minutes, and you walk out and you pull it down, you're like, I mean, it does feel better, but I don't know how they do the parks. I mean, I think that they're going to make you sign something, or a
Too.
waiver.
I
Um,
mean, I can see that. I mean, we're already talking about it through my daughter, through Emily's little league. I'm on the board of directors, and we're already thinking of we got to get waivers in place. We got to do this. We're gonna have to do that. Temperature checks. That's even if we will. But for sure, this season that's coming up for the fall is not going to happen. But we're trying to be hopeful, and maybe during the spring of next year it'll be okay. But even then, it may be okay, but it's not going to be the same.
no, man. Like I was telling Julia, like even if there was a vaccine tomorrow, the world that we knew before this is gone because some of these precautions will still be in place. You know what I mean? Like even if it's less occupancy or wearing a mask to a certain degree, they're still going to stick around for a long, long time. And the world and the parks and the this and the that we knew, it's gone. I mean, it doesn't mean that something better can't come out of this, but I don't think we're going to see anything normal, quote unquote, normal for my guess would be 2 years That's my guess. So it was just strange. Like, we haven't even gone out to eat since anything happened. I mean, we bring it home. We went to a breakfast place once and sat outside, but I'm not a big restaurant guy either, anyways. So like, I don't really care. But even the like the luxury of saying like, let's go get this and sit there and eat. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, nah, I'm good. You know.
Especially now, I mean, you just gotta consider like what may happen. I mean, we've gone twice, maybe.
Hmm.
We went this past Friday for our anniversary. So we went to Orange Mining, whatever place up in Orange.
I don't know. That
Um,
place is good. That's
and
that
it's
place
like
is swank, man.
that place is what?
Swank. Yeah, that's
Uh,
a little
yeah,
pricey.
yeah, definitely is pricey. Yeah, for sure. Um, but we the it was weird because you gotta have your mask on when you're sitting. I mean, not when you're sitting, when you're waiting to get seated, and then you're walking to the table, and they got these tables 6 feet apart, and they got the booths, and they got plexiglass between booths, and it was really like weird, and
It's
then
weird.
it's like, and then like just thinking of, oh, I gotta use the restroom. Let me put my mask back. Let me put my mask on to go to the restroom, you know, or like we left, we signed the check and we left, and we walked up and we're like literally halfway out the door, and we're like, oh shit, our mask. We didn't have our mask on. We like quickly like we almost embarrassed. Like, holy
Yeah,
crap, we don't have our mask on. Let's put it
that's
on real
shaming.
quick.
That's shaming.
Right? Isn't that crazy? It's a thing now. It's a thing. But I ain't, I mean, that's just gonna be the world we're gonna be living in for some time. And you say 2 years, but I mean, we had a conversation one time, and we discussed the fact that it may take up to even 5 years to find a vaccine.
The
You know,
fastest vaccine that's been developed in our lifetime was 5 years. But you also have the aid of modern medicine. I mean, you have, you're also looking at this is a global pandemic versus just an epidemic. So it's not like just the people in the United States are working on this, or just people in China. It's the world
the world.
is working together on this. Because who doesn't want to be the first person to vaccinate this? Of course, because the amount of attention exposure, but I do think it will be less time. But I'm not a fucking doctor. I don't have a medical degree, and like, I hate when these people are like, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal." And I'm like, "Dude, you didn't even pass high school science. Like, shut up."
I know I sure hells didn't.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Shut up, man." Like, so it's weird. I mean, it's what are the holidays going to look like? I know Black Friday in the U.S. is canceled this year, in person at least. Like, online is fine, but
That
you know,
Amazon is just getting all that attention right now. I
yeah,
mean, they're getting their set their amount of boxes that are being sent out is just crazy. They are short on bodies at Amazon, and it's just like flipping crazy just how short they are.
yeah. Right. Well, I mean, Bezos is the richest man in what is it, human history or something like that, and he's
Yeah,
just
he's
getting richer and
pretty up
richer.
there.
So I think he is. Like, I think he is the richest man in either world history or something like that, something crazy like that.
I mean, it's out there really, to be honest, and that's what's the trippy part,
It's gross.
and people don't realize that that's this guy did it from out of nowhere. No one, when I first saw Amazon, I was like, what the hell is this?
Well,
Buying stuff online.
it's kind of like going back to the original question of like working from home. I mean, you have to be disciplined, and I mean, I've heard his story and I've read his story, and say what you want about the guy, but like, he did make something out of nothing, and he took a risk and he took a gamble. And the same thing with Netflix. Like, there's this really fun Netflix documentary called Netflix versus the World on Amazon, and it talks about what they were. I mean, I remember getting discs, and having that queue and sending discs out and shit. And they talk about from where they started to where they are now, and like the people that worked day in and day out from their homes and these shitty offices, and they grew this empire into, I mean, Netflix is, when now Netflix has become that thing when you're like, oh, what do you want to watch tonight? Oh, let's just Netflix something. It's
It's
like
just
when you go,
Netflix.
oh, just give me like a Coke, but you mean Sprite. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those
It's
things. Like,
almost coined term in a way. We know what it means.
right?
But I mean, we talked about Amazon's empire, but let's talk about your empire. I mean, I know I'm using a broad term there, man, but
My empire behind me.
yeah, man. I mean, look. Let's take a look at this real fast. I mean, this is what I want to show right here. See if we can get this. Look at that handsome man right there,
Good old Walter White.
Walter White. I mean, I know a little bit about this and the history behind it, but why don't you tell us why this piece of work is so important to you?
When was that done? 2013, I think. I think it
Uh,
was at the bottom. I have it framed in the living room, but before that, I used to do fairly cartoony work, like I wouldn't say comic booky, I would say more cartoony, so when somebody would ask me to do a picture of them, I kind of have to give them the disclaimer of like, well, it doesn't look like you, but it will like, it embodies you. It's not going to be a hardcore likeness. And at the time, I mean, I was hooked on Breaking Bad. I'm sure like everybody else. And
you got me in it, man. You're the one that got me hooked on it. You're the one that told me I
you and
have to
like
watch it.
2 dozen other people. And, I mean, like we were talking about with like the criminology thing, like I found the character of Walter White to just be so multifaceted and fascinating and this and that. And I remember like I was sitting at the time, I had a little tiny home office and I was sitting at the computer and I was kind of just doing one of these things, like looking at the internet and reading Twitter. Yep, I still have that. I still have that shirt. I still wear it once in a while, and people are like, "Where do I get that?" I'm like, "You can't."
Limited edition, buddy.
Yeah. Um, and they had said like, "Oh, the DVD release of season 2 is coming out," and that was the picture of his face that was on the cover. It was just a close-up shot of his face, and I was looking at it, and I was like, "I think I could do that," And I had that big ass Wacom Cintiq tablet at my desk at the time, that big drawing tablet. I still have in the garage, and I
That's
had the picture
the
up.
that's the one with it's like a display, right? Like a
It's a
third display or
display that
second.
you draw on the display.
Correct, correct.
So I had that up, and I had the picture on my screen, and I just sat there like this, and I used, what did I use? I think I used SketchUp. No.
This tablet right here.
Yep. I still have that. Man, you were like an Instagram stalker. Using those
I'm
old ass,
doing my research, buddy. Come on.
using those old ass photos, and I think it was like 2 o'clock at night, and I just sat down and I just started sketching it, and then I was like, "Oh, that was pretty good." And if you look at it closely, you can kind of see how like jagged the lines are, the black lines. So
Hmm.
I did the inking, and it's one of those things where you sit back and you're like, "Damn, that actually looks pretty good." And I thought, well, I don't want to color it, you know, like it is, like a human. I want to give it something different. And I think the DVD cover had like a gold tint to it,
Hmm.
and I thought like, I'll just try that. So I threw down that base gold, and then I threw down like a darker orange on top of it with like a kind of a green background, and I kept everything like really heavy blacks. And I remember looking at it and thinking like, to me, Walter's intensity is in his eyes, you know, and because he's got those big glasses that he kind of hides his eyes behind. And every time I'd sit back, I'm like, damn, that actually looks pretty good. I kept going.
Even in
And
the series, I remember the scenes where he'd have that look in his eye, and you just kind of knew, like, oh shit, something's about to happen right now. He's about to do something just out of nowhere,
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like the thing that I like the most about that picture is that when you draw a likeness, most people tend to overthink it. They'll see a nose and they'll think they got to draw every line of the nose, and what happens is you end up making it look like ridiculous, or they'll draw every line on the face, which makes a person look older. And I remember sitting back that night or that morning and just thinking, like, don't overthink this. Just do it. Just do it. And that's why you see, like, the lines in his face and the creases and the folds and shit. I just simplified it, and something in my brain just clicked. And it was like, shit, that looks like Walter White. That looks like him. And then I colored it, and I sat back, and I'm like, damn, that actually looks pretty good. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that again. And so I found a picture of Jesse. And I sat down, and I started doing Jesse, did the same process, tried not to overthink about it. And I think it took me about 4 to 5 hours to do both. So this is like approaching 7 a.m. in the morning. And I'm up just doing one of these things. Like, I sat back and I looked at them and I'm like, holy shit. Like, they look really good for what I can do. And I like how I put them kind of like this, like they're on opposing sides, so like if you put them side by side, they almost create a face. And I remember like sending it to my printer and being like, dude, what do you think? And they were like, holy shit. And printing out a bunch of I'd have to go back and see if I'm sure in your Instagram stalking, I'd have to go back and look at the original post. But when I posted it got a decent amount of traction. And then when I put the prints up for sale, it got a lot of traction. And then I made T-shirts. And then people in different countries, there was this comedian, Chris Ramsey from the UK, that like fell in love with it. And I sent him a shirt. He wore it on some like, it's called Celeb Juice in the UK. I don't know if it's still on, but it was like kind of like their TMZ.
Oh, okay.
I had to sign a bunch of paperwork, like releasing my artwork for him to wear, and then
that's pretty crazy.
And then the guy that played Gus found it, Giancarlo Esposito. He found it online, and I never got Bryan Cranston. Like my dream would be Bryan Cranston to sign. Yeah, I still have that hanging up. That would be my dream, to have Bryan Cranston sign, but my copy, because I have the original, and I have the very, very first one that was ever printed, and I would love to get him to sign that for me. And
is that hanging on your wall, or is that stored somewhere?
You've been here. It's the one hanging up. It's
no. I mean the original. The original.
Yeah, one in the frame is the original.
The one in the frame is the original. Because that's hanging right there on the hallway towards the kitchen, right?
Yep.
One on top of the other one.
Yep. And
that's why I your house either, but
that's the one that I consider to be like, when people ask me what's your favorite thing you've ever done, I always say that, because not because it's technically the greatest, because I've done more technically, better illustrations, but that is special to me because it kind of turned the page in my career. And I mean, dude, I've sent that artwork to 3-4 dozen different countries, prints.
Yeah.
And I've sent it to like Uruguay and fucking Panama, and I mean, just tiny Kazakhstan, shit like that. And that's the one that I'm probably the most, I don't want to say recognized, but remembered for,
Which puts you on the spot, puts you in the spotlight, so to speak, Is that a good analogy? Is that a good?
I mean, that's the one that kind of brought people to my Instagram page. And I mean, I've had people that have talked to me in the last, let's say, month. They're like, dude, I've been following you for like a decade or whatever, 8 years, 9 years. And I'm like, oh shit, thanks. Yeah, I remember when you posted Walter White. I remember when you did this. I remember when you did that. You know, um, that's the one that I don't want to say the term made me famous, but like made me. I mean, certainly
Known.
it's the one that made me known for doing a certain detailed style, and you know, it's the one that really turned the page for me creatively. You know, to think like, oh, I can do that. You know, I can do a likeness now. I can do a portrait. I can do whatever. If it wasn't for those, you know, I'd probably still be doing the same shit.
You're like, that's what. Now everything you're like, bring it on. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Well,
And that's
yeah, I
pretty
mean,
cool.
after that, um, that comedian Chris Ramsey from the UK, he was big on that show Boardwalk Empire. He goes, hey man, can I commission you to draw some of those characters from Boardwalk Empire in that same style? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, you know, and I did like 3 of them or something. His wife actually tagged me, Rosie. His wife tagged me in something the other day. Like they have that print hung in their home, and she tagged me and she was like, "Is this yours?" And I was like, "Yep." And you know, I mean, he loved it. A bunch of people loved it.
How does that make you feel? Like honestly, I mean, how does that make you feel when you get like that sort of like, hey, that's my artwork hanging in somebody else's home?
I mean, it's I'm weird. I don't really get too attached to stuff like that. I mean, I think it's cool, you know, when people tag me and they're like, "Hey, you know, I've got this, this, and this." I mean, it's flattering. You know, it's always like, "Thanks," but I don't really get too attached to the sense of like, "Oh yeah, you know, my stuff is hanging in somebody else's house." Like, I don't think like that. I mean, it's nice and it's flattering and it's certainly like, "Wow, you know, that's really cool," but um, I don't really look beyond that. You know what I mean? Like it's like okay, because you know when you do anything creative, man, you hate everything you do. The second you're done with it, you're like, get the shit out of my face. You
You're
know?
just you're your hardest critic, essentially.
Yeah, you're just on to the next. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like I hate talking about stuff that I do. I hate answering how was your day. You know, I hate that question, man. Like, how was your day? What'd you do? I'm like, oh God. And you know, I don't want to talk about, well, you know, I colored Batman today because it's not a hard
That is some
job.
sheen. I used this kind of brush today. I
Yeah,
experimented with
yeah.
this.
So I try not to get too like. I always find it flattering. Like when that lady sent me that video of her son opening that picture I made for him. She asked me to do for graduation a couple weeks ago. Like that was really cool. You know, I've had
The
people
one of her
send me.
son, right?
Yeah,
It was a son. He
yeah,
was graduating high school.
yeah. He's graduating high school, and because it was COVID, it was whatever. But I think that's cool, and I appreciate it. I keep those videos, and I've had people send me like a wedding video where she got married and she commissioned me to do like the Millennium Falcon and the Starship Enterprise kind of flying together, and it took me like 3 months to do it. And she framed it and gave it to her husband on their wedding day. That's cool, and I think it's flattering and it's super nice, but I watched the video, I post it, and I'm like, okay, cool.
I mean,
Like
you do some crazy detailed crap, man. I mean, I don't mean crap as in it's crap. I mean shit as in like it's you do a whole bunch of stuff, but I mean,
yeah,
I like look at this thing right now. So I'm sure you've seen it 600 times, but I mean Godzilla for fuck's sake, man. Look at all those lines and
makes
shading
me
and detail and
honestly like
textures.
when I look at that now, it makes me cringe because Godzilla is scaly and he's got various textures to him. Like I would not do that like that. That right there is me trying to figure out how to make those textures look different without drawing every single scale. Like I did a series of dinosaurs too, and if you look at the first one to the last one, you can kind of see, at least hopefully, a progression of.
It was from the first Jurassic World movie, right?
Yep.
I mean, those you can tell the difference since the scales and you can see that the technique and stuff like that. I mean,
but it also goes back to that Walter White of like, okay, if this creature is covered in scales, how do I make it look scaly without having to draw every single scale? Because if I draw every single scale, it's going to be too busy. So you have to give the illusion of a texture without making it like overly done, and that's kind of the trick. And that's I mean, I still kind of mess with that now, but even like with hair, you know, and facial hair, especially light hair. Anybody with light hair is like, fuck, you know. But
why is that? Why is it that the
because
light hair
if
is?
they have dark hair, you can hide more with black. If they have blonde hair, you traditionally won't use heavy black on blonde. If I were drawing somebody with long brown hair, you would do, thick black, and then you would have like brown highlights to kind of give the illusion of light. If they're blonde, unless you want them to have bad roots, you don't use heavy, heavy, heavy black. You would use, what is that? Oh yeah, Jesus, I haven't seen 276 weeks ago. I remember that. That's the first one I did. That's crazy.
That's 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, June 15, June 12.
We have one of those hanging in the bathroom.
And then there's the final.
Yeah, we have that one hanging in the bathroom because I printed it out for Julie because she thought, what did she ask me? Like, did Jesus and the dinosaurs live together?
Is this the Death Before Dinosaur? 1 hour and 11 minutes. Mark that right now so she can listen to that part.
I need to make something for Death Before. Like, that's still my favorite. I'm not even kidding with you. I want it tattooed like on the inside of my arm right here. Death Before Dinosaurs.
An homage to Julie.
That's the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That was the second one I did.
Yep.
I think the Triceratops or the Indominus Rex, I think, might have been the last one, or Triceratops. But the Indominus was a commission that I did that was like a 3-piece. So 3 pictures made of one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was cool. I like shit like that. I mean, I'm almost 40 years old and I still nerd out about dinosaurs. So,
I'm embarrassed to say, but I mean, I do have some of your artwork at home, but unfortunately, we don't have it hanging. We have it. We have it stored properly in boxes. Okay.
The prints, I can run off other one. Like, I think we have Walt and Jesse. I don't have anything in here. The Walt and Jesse, we have a dinosaur. That's it. I don't like hanging my shit.
Jesse and dinosaur. That's it, really? I'm trying to think.
I have pictures in this little drawer that I have of like those Frankie Edgar pictures that I made. He autographed a bunch of them for me. I don't have them hanging up. I have a Ric Flair picture that I did that Ric Flair signed for me. I don't have it hanging up.
I mean, have you done a lot? I mean, UFC, WWE, Disney, cartoons, movies. I've seen portraits, people you change into. I remember there was one photo, and the only reason why I remember it stood out is because I'm a Superman fan, and you have the dad and the son portrait where he's holding his son. I mean, like those things, I mean, that's crazy because, you essentially have to dress him to sort of say you make the body and you have to make the costume fit to how you're drawing them. And, and you going back to your earlier comment of you want to make sure you're not overdoing it with the detail to make it look busy, but you want to give enough detail for it to be, okay, this is the cape. This is a wrinkle on his boot. This is the whatever, like.
Yeah, but like, if I draw a picture of Superman, I'm not a fan of when you can see the abs, the obliques, the whole thing through the suit, because realistically, like that's not how fabric works. Like that thing would have to be vacuum sealed to him to be able to do. Even in Man of Steel, I mean, they'll airbrush abs on the suit or make certain areas darker. But as big as that guy is, you don't see it. So like, if I draw a dad as Superman, I try to make it look like he would look like wearing a Superman costume. You know, sometimes I trim people up, or they lose 40 pounds or whatever. But like, even when I do Spider-Man, I don't like showing abs through the suit. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't like showing super defined muscles through the suit because that's not how fabric
Mm-hmm.
works. So I try to, I prefer wrinkles and creases to, and stitching. For whatever reason, I like stitching. But like, um, like if a dad goes, hey man, can you turn me into Superman? Sure. But I'm not going to give him a six pack unless he specifically asks me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make the physique look good, but I'm not going to give him every, fucking vein in the arm and all that kind of stuff because I just don't.
So what you're saying is you can trim off about 60 pounds of fat for me?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think every 90s kid growing up, any 90s person that grew up in the 90s can appreciate this picture. I mean, if you don't know who this is or what this is reference to, you gotta go,
Dude, I
jump off
got
a
a
cliff. So
Green Ranger dagger right there, right behind me.
I know I've had the pleasure of touching it.
That's weird. I think I have a
That's what
coin
she said.
somewhere. Yeah, I have a coin somewhere too. See, all the Power Rangers that I did, like, even as, I think, what is that, like 3, 4 years ago?
2015.
Okay, so 5 years. So, like, I would do that because, you know, if you're in any kind of creative thing, the more you absorb, the more you learn. And by looking at people on Instagram or reading comic books, like there's this guy Dan Mora who does the Go Go Power Rangers, the Power Rangers series. His fucking artwork is phenomenal, but you look at the way that he draws them, and you start to pick up certain things from him. Like, oh, I like the way that he draws the Green Ranger shield. You know what I mean? And it's almost like, when you do what I do, you become Thanos and you're trying to collect a stone from everybody that you see and you merge it into your own thing. Like I don't, looking at that now, I'm like, I don't really think that looks that good. I would do that. I would do that
I think
so different.
my personal favorite, like, style you do sort of sometimes it's that like very comic buoy, vintage kind of sort of look, like this whole thing where you can see the
Offset
little,
printing.
yeah, there you go, that whole thing. I like it.
I love
Even
shit
some,
like that.
yeah, some of the pieces you've done, even like the newer stuff you've done. I mean, some of that newer stuff you've done, it's like you'd say you like to play with texture and new things. I think you were doing a couple Spider-Mans and well, have you done several freaking Spider-Mans? I think that's probably, is that, would you say that's the most commissioned thing you've ever done?
Spider-Man is by far the most requested character I've ever gotten to this day, and I chalk it up to, Batman, Superman are divisive, yada yada yada. Spider-Man is universally beloved, universally, whether it's Miles or Peter or whatever. Spider-Man is universally beloved.
I mean, Emily loves him.
Huh?
Emily loves him.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Like, and I mean, now with Miles, I mean, you have one for white kids, you have one for kids of color. There's a female Spider-Man, there's an Asian Spider-Man, there's a fucking, there's all kinds of shit. And, um, that one that I did just recently, the Unlimited, that guy, he asked me to do it was Scarlet Spider in 2099, kind of split down the, like this. It's like 4 years ago, something like that. And I did it, and I kind of changed around the costumes, and for whatever reason, people really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, "Hey man, I want to have you do something else," and he was talking about this idea, and he's like, "I'd like to do two different versions. If you had to pick, what would you do?" And I was watching Spider-Man Unlimited on Disney Plus, like right on this TV right here, and I'm like, "Spider-Man Unlimited." Like, why? And I'm like, because nobody ever gives that show any love. It's kind of a bad show, but it's an interesting look. And I was telling him, I would change this, I would change that, I'd make it a little bit more sleek. And then I'd start messing with this whole Spider-Verse thing and maybe look like it's glitched, like he's glitching through his world and turning into another one. And I explain this whole thing. And he's like, yeah, man, just do that. You know? And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, just do that. I'm like, you want to pay me to do that? And he's like, yeah. And so we worked it out. And I gave him the whole
Is this
idea.
you're referring to her?
Yeah. And so originally that was going to cut off at Venom. And then below that would have been the House of M Spider-Man, which is another version. And it would have had other panels with his characters in it. And then when he saw this, he's like, you know what? Let's skip that idea and just continue this. And I'm like, okay. So that's when I added in the Green Goblin. I added in I forgot the guy's name at the bottom. But to me, it was supposed to tell a story of like the Spider Buddy Peter, Venom Incarnate, blah blah. And I redesigned the costume to make it look a little more streamlined. And I checked my Instagram the other day, like that in this Venom that I did a couple weeks ago are the most liked things that I've ever done, ever, in terms of like numbers. Like I think Venom is almost a 5,000.
Which one?
I don't know. It's a
The one you did in two different color backgrounds at first?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a purple background, I think a blue background or something. It was part of a pin series that I did. It had like Spawn and yeah. So that one go up. Yeah. Like that's the most light thing I've ever done, which is bizarre.
And then who's this beautiful girl right here?
I don't know, but she's smoking hot.
Yeah, she is fine as hell.
I know. I think so too. That's such a weird filter. I took that picture and I'm like, damn, she's actually kind of hot.
You're like, I tapped that.
Like, I sent it to a couple people who are like, who's that? Like, don't say anything weird. Yeah. That was a weird like that aging filter too that came out last year.
Oh, I saw that. I remember seeing that. I remember scrolling through it right now earlier. That was a crazy one.
But then apparently like Russia was spying on us with it or something.
But how about this moment right here, Joe?
Oh yeah, dude.
You have Israel Adesanya wearing your freaking shirt on this interview here.
So I think it's Adesanya.
Adesanya? Stylebender.
Like there you go.
Stylebender. Who just fought this past weekend, man.
He did. So I've watched him when he was in Glory. What, 5 years ago, I want to say. And he reminded me of like a John Jones and Anderson Silva, which I know he hates, but I mean the comparisons are there. And then when he made his UFC debut, February 2018, I remember telling Sachin, our friend, like, this guy's special. Like, pay attention to him. And, you know, he became champion less than 2 years in the division. And when I did that Spider-Man, I log in one day and it's like Stylebender, like your picture. And I'm like, oh shit. You know, I'm a fan. Like, I'm a big fan of his. And then when I put those shirts up, you know, I checked my email one day and it's like Israel Adesanya has made an order. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know?
You couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it. So I direct messaged him and I sent him a screenshot and he just wrote, ha ha ha, I didn't know if you'd notice. And I'm like, of course I noticed. You know, and I'm like, I really appreciate that. Like, and he goes, hey man, I'm just supporting things that I like. I love the artwork. I can't wait to get it. And I'm like, cool, man. You know, this is before he fought Gastelum. This is before he became champion. I think he was in his third fight, maybe. And I sent him out the package, and I put like Israel Adesanya, quote, the champ. You know, and I wrote him like a note saying like, I really appreciate the support, champ. You know, anytime you fight, you got my money and this and this and that. And I, you know, I mean, you never hear back. And that was the media event going into the Romero fight. So what, February this year?
Yeah.
And I was laying in bed one morning, and I turned on the TV and I'm watching, because I watch all that shit, all of it, interviews, post fight, press fight, breakdowns, everything. I watch everything, and I'm like looking at it, like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh shit! And he leans back, and I can see it, and I'm like, no way, because I never got confirmation that it was delivered.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh fuck, it didn't
Was
deliver, and he thinks I'm a flake.
was this the one that was delivered internationally, or was this a different one?
No, that's
Did
in
you
New Zealand,
right?
Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah.
And
I remember going to your place when you still lived in Santa Ana, and you're like, dude, like this is who it is. Look, he ordered one. It
yeah,
was crazy.
yeah,
It was not.
and I saw that thing, and I put a screenshot, and I sent him a screenshot, and I sent it to him, and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. And he's like, oh man, he goes, I would have taken the jacket off. It was really cold.
It was cold. The AC, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even care, man. I go, if you ever wear it again and you want to, like, if you could send me a picture, I would, that would make my day. And he's like, yeah, man, for sure. And he's a really nice guy. And he's so fucking talented. It's scary.
You listen to, by any chance, Tiger Belly, the podcast?
Once in a while, I do.
So the recent one, the one that just actually have Michael Bisping on it.
When?
And the one that just came out, the most recent one that just came out. And it's Michael Bisping on it, and they literally, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but they really talk about this fight briefly. One particular part they talk about is the question of whether Michael Bisping can think he can take on Israel Adesanya as whatever style bender.
Adesanya.
What you said, yes.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny.
I just finished Bisping's book last week too. And it's funny because I tweeted like, I finished your book, and like, man, what a story. And I even told him, like, I wasn't always a fan, but you won me over like years and years ago. Like, I'm such an admiration of everything that you did. And he just wrote back like, thanks a lot, thanks for reading, a movie's in the works. And I'm like, if there's anything that I could ever do for you, it's completely on the house as a way to say thank you for the years of entertainment. That's the same way I met Steve. And in terms of
we got to clarify that. You and I know who you're talking about. Steve Stone Cold, Steve Austin. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, dude, I love those guys. Like Frankie. I mean, I fucking love Frankie Edgar, and I remember tagging him in some artwork, and he messaged me, and he's like, "Can I get one of those?" Like, yeah, of course. And I said, "If I send you one for me, would you mail it? Would you sign it, and I'll pay for return shipping?" And he's like, "Of course." And then I sent his kids a bunch of Ninja Turtle pictures, and he posted it. Like, I don't want anything in return. I just, like, if you could sign my artwork, that would be cool. And I want to do one of Bisping, because there's a picture of him where I think after he won the belt, or after he beat Anderson Silva, and he's just fucked up, right? But he's got the flag behind him, and he's all busted up. And I want to do like a painting of that and send it to him to see if he'd sign it for me. But in regards to him fighting Israel fuck him up.
Well, there was a comment that they were pretty much asking, Stylebender versus Bisping, and the Bob would win. And that's how it kind of started off, and they kind of talked about it a little bit, and there was some comedy aspects to it, and they briefly touched on the fact that Bobby Lee got called out by Ronda Rousey because he was talking shit on the podcast, and Ronda Rousey saw him in person and talk about me type of thing, and he like almost shit his pants.
I watched that Hot Ones episode with him. He's an interesting guy, man. He did an episode of Hot Ones a couple of years ago, and he actually shit his pants.
Oh,
the spicy chicken wings.
Bobby Lee?
Watch the Hot Ones episode with Bobby Lee. He shits his pants.
I can see that happening actually from him.
I think his whole gimmick is just kind of being like gross.
Yeah, but he
You
has
know,
this like very
yeah, I
beautiful
know.
girlfriend.
Was it Kayla?
No, uh, oh my God, um, Kali. Oh my God,
I
they
know
were
you're
just
talking
talking
about.
about it because it said two different ways because it's a Middle Eastern name, and it said it's not said properly. So
Like Adesanya.
like Estelle Bender, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that because I think Bisping's been on before, but I really like him a lot, and I know he lives in Anaheim Hills, and uh, I mean he's retired. You know, he's not going to fight Stylebender.
Oh no, he's not gonna do any of that. I think it was just stuff for the shows, entertainment aspect of it. So
A lot of those guys, I mean, when you're that alpha male, you don't want to go. No, that guy would kick my ass. You know what I mean? You're like, no, fuck that. I'd kick that guy's ass, even though I am retired.
no, for sure, yeah, no, I can totally take on Style Bender as well.
Right. Well, no. I mean, that's you're not a former champion alpha male, whatever. But I like Chuck Liddell still thinks he beat John Jones.
Chuck Liddell is like one knockout away from like some severe mental freaking damage
I
there.
think he's already there.
I mean, I remember seeing him get knocked out back in 2008, 2009, and when we still worked at that place where we should not be named,
Yeah.
and and that's all I remember from Chuck Liddell is just him trying to do that spinning back fist thing and just getting knocked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been watching UFC since UFC 1, and I remember when he used to fight, it was, I mean, I used to get scared of those people, you know. So, but
So
he's what,
UFC, I'm
almost
sorry.
50? He's
Yeah, he's
almost
he's
50.
old. He's oh yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
He's
You
there.
don't need to fight.
UFC 254. Khabib
Oh,
main card. The main
no.
event is Khabib and Gaethje. So
Gaethje.
Gaethje, whatever.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one.
So I have a friend who has started like those pins, like those enamel pins.
I saw that. I saw that pin. At first, I was like, "Who the hell is that?" And then when I saw the side tattoo, I'm like, "Oh, that's Justin Gaethje." Okay.
Well, Justin Gaethje's team actually contacted him to make these for them.
Really?
So yeah, he's not selling them. As in, my buddy's not selling them. He just got the vendor to do it to get it done, and they're only sold on Justin Gaethje's website. That's it. They're only
The
there.
cool pin. I remember when he did the middle finger, like the middle finger. Like it's a cool pin. Man, if he wins, holy shit! Wow.
Holy shit, indeed.
I'm kind of. I still have to watch. I go back and I watch all their fights, and like with Stylebender, I told Julie before the main event, I'm like, he's gonna fuck this guy up. Like, there's levels to this game. And I was trying to explain to her how it's like a bull versus a matador, and how a lot of guys, like, if Costa comes forward, some guys would back up. And I'm like, Izzy doesn't back up, he pivots. He pivots and he forces you to turn into something.
Well, his
And
leg got beat the fuck up, man. I mean, his leg is you can see the bruising, and because I
but
was like those kicks.
the beauty in that performance is in the nuances. Is like, first of all, he's got a reach advantage, right? Costa's this big, muscular, marauding guy, and he goes forward. But you notice how he didn't he walked forward initially, and then he stopped because Izzy froze him. Because Izzy would feint, he'd feint, he'd look down, he'd go high. He'd feint, he'd step, he'd read it, and he'd go no, and he'd reset, and then he would switch from southpaw to orthodox, and it froze Costa to the point where Costa was standing there like Romero did, doing this fucking, you know, bullshit. And it wasn't because he forgot how to fight, it's because Israel froze him. And, I mean, I've watched that fight probably 3 or 4 times, and you just see the way that, like, Israel will, like, L step out and then he'll faint, and then he'll come in, he'll freeze him, and when he faints, he knows what he's going to do, and he'll just kick that leg, and he'll kick the thigh, he'll kick the knee, he'll kick the calf. And I mean, when you start hitting your leg and start doing one of these things, you're fucked up. You know.
I mean, the first round though. I mean, you had Costa. You had Costa there teasing him, and
because he didn't know what else to do.
So I mean, and I noticed like Israel's a really good distance fighter. He did amazing what he did. But I told you, I watched it Sunday afterwards. But I was like, texting, man, I just finished watching these fights, and you're like, what'd you think? And I was like, I thought the main event was a little slow, but I get why. He beat the hell out of that freaking leg.
Masterclass. Like that was, he butchered that dude. Butchered him. If you know what you're looking at when you watch that fight, I mean, it's like one of those like chef kisses that you just do. You know what I mean? Where you're like, perfection. Dude, Costa didn't land a punch on him.
Mm-mm.
And he's talking about how he's gonna knock him out, and he's a skinny bitch, and this and that, and all this shit. And
well, I remember watching the fight where Israel calls him out. What do you call him? The Ricky Martin or Ricky Ricardo or whatever.
Ricky Martin lookalike.
Yeah. But I mean, my favorite fight of the definitely the thing was the flyweight, man. Those flyweights, man. Holy crap, man!
And we're gonna get rid of that division.
Why?
Because Mighty Mouse wasn't a big draw, and they were just gonna phase it out. And then Cejudo kind of saved the division when he beat Mighty Mouse.
Really?
And like, I've watched that Israel fight. Fuck. Realistically, about 3 or 4 times now. I mean, shit, it's like 7 minutes long.
Yeah, it was quick. Well, I won't say quick, but 7 minutes long.
It's so good. Like, for someone who can't do that shit, you're like, oh my god. Like, look at that. And even the one before it, the co-main, the Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes.
I was rooting for Dominic Reyes, man.
I thought Dom was going to win, and Blachowicz fucked him up.
Yeah, definitely. Dude, those punches to the head, man, they just... Holy crap.
He froze him, too. I mean, those body kicks, you saw that right side. I mean, you could see the toes imprinted on his side.
That's how hard he was kicking.
Yeah. So, I mean, the rest of the card was okay. But those 2 fights were... And Israel says he wants to fight again this year. I don't know who they put him in with.
This year was like a November fight or something, or what?
I think maybe December, something like that. But anytime he fights, he's got my money. Like, hands down. Yeah, that's cool. It doesn't say Death Before Dinosaurs, though.
I don't know. We got to ask Julie.
My only problem is if you look at his left pec on your right-hand side, it looks like he's got a titty. See
this
how it
one?
kind of droops? No, other one. Yeah, see how it kind of droops?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like he's kind of got a titty. And it looks like his belly button is kind of wide, which makes him look fat.
Look chunky.
Yeah, like it looks
chunky Mickey.
Like he has a wide belly button. See, if you were going to do a portrait of that, I think what he did was whoever did the artwork, they took his obliques and his midsection, and they, instead of making it sharp, they made it round, which makes it look fat. It's a cool picture, though.
Those middle fingers. Infamous haphazard pins. Yep.
And they're in Abu Dhabi?
Nope.
Oh.
They're local.
Interesting.
They're local. They're local.
It's a little fat, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I take a little
Yeah, I
bit.
mean it's crazy because he does more of like the boxing and soccer stuff, and all of a sudden he got hit up by them, and here we are. He's doing Justin Gaethje's pin there.
And if Gaethje wins, I mean, shit, man, your buddy with the pins is probably going to get more work or more whatever. Be asked to do more stuff.
That'd be cool. I mean, good for him. That's a good thing. I like to see people succeed like that. So, but what are you? How can people? And then you got commission spots, and I see you posted on Instagram. How are you working those? Are you doing like a certain amount a month, a week, a day, type
It's a
of thing?
week. I try
Okay,
to not do. I don't want to overload
overloader.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then I can't finish them and I feel like an asshole. So every week it changes because the more I finish, the more I can take on. But usually it's like 5 per week, And then if you see me go, oh, I've got 3 left, that means I took 2, or maybe I took one big one. But I try to kind of slot it out based on time. So if someone says I want this big, like that Spider-Man, this big, that takes me. Spider-Man took me like 3 or 4 weeks, to do because it was a lot back and forth, and then every piece was drawn individually. So it's kind of like a puzzle, you know what I mean? I make the pieces and then I put them together. But then if someone's like, I want a cat, like that cat that I did, I actually really like doing stuff like that. That took me 2 months because it was
Uh-huh.
painted. So it was me painting every brush stroke, a lot of back and forth. But if somebody says I want, something basic, then that might take me a day, and I can do another one, right after that. But if it's something where it's going to take me 3 4 weeks, I don't open that spot up until it's done.
Okay.
So it's usually 5, but I think right now I have 1 or 2 left, and then I have a couple emails that I have to read, and
So
yeah,
essentially, you're working on pretty much 5 things at once. Is that how I kind of gathered, or?
it doesn't. It's not a certain number. I mean, it could be 2 giant things. It could be 5 small things. It could be, But I like to look at different things at once because I don't want to get bored. That's kind of the the curse of this kind of job is like, oh, I get paid to draw Spider-Man, which is fun, but you do anything for too long, and you're like, oh fuck, man, I'm bored. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's usually 5, but whatever. I mean, with the holidays coming up, I usually open it up around early to mid October for holiday stuff, just so I have that time. And people always love to wait till the last minute, and I usually tell them like cutoffs or whatever
I do
stuff
remember
like that.
seeing those, during the holiday seasons, and I think my favorite thing to read is those comments you get of people that they go, "Oh, well, why don't you do this?" And you're like, "Oh, well, why don't you commission it?" Sort of thing is like, and they go, "Well, just draw it, people are gonna buy it, blah blah blah." And I was reading a comment earlier. I forget where I was at. Oh, I was looking at the Power Ranger one. You did it with the Green Ranger with the Zord in the back, and there was a comment that said, "Why don't you do the other Power Rangers a similar style?" And your response was, "If you commission it, I will. I don't have the time to do this." Essentially
Yeah,
what you said.
it's social media is weird. Like, I don't really get a lot of bad comments anymore. Like, I used to get some really, really fucked up comments, and I'm like, I'm a guy that draws pop culture characters for money. Why are you guys saying this shit to me?
Uh
I'm
huh.
not like a religious figure or a political figure. You know what I mean? Like, if this is the way you act towards me, good lord. And now I don't really get. I don't know what it is if people just don't really give a shit. But like, when I posted that Spider-Man Unlimited, some guy was just like, this is the worst cartoon in the history of the world, or some shit. And I wrote him back, and it genuinely made me laugh. And I'm like, I honestly laughed out loud because the fact that you thought you had to put that, like it's funny to me, you know. And I do get a lot of like, oh, you should do Batman Beyond, and I'm like, I'll do Batman Beyond. I would love to do Batman Beyond, but I don't have the free time to do it unless I'm getting paid for it, you know. So if you want to commission it or you know whatever, let's do it. But I don't have 25 hours to spare, um, to do it for free. But
Just to
I
sit
don't know.
there and just too free because you got so much
No,
free time.
I mean I like to draw stuff for myself too, but like can't take it can't take priority over something that's being paid because when someone gives you money, you kind of make a promise to them, and I don't want to break that promise. And but no, I mean most people that comment are pretty cool. Like I have a couple of friends that they get a lot of weird comments, like your artwork fucking sucks, and I'm like, who puts it like who says that? You know what I mean?
I
Like
mean, you're taking the time to make such a negative comment. Like you're really gonna put the effort to be so negative. Like really?
I don't know why. Yeah, I mean I used to get some horrible dude. I've had people wish death on me on Instagram, and I think lately, especially with like the last year, like I just don't care. I don't give a shit. I don't feed into it. I don't give it any oxygen. And I'm like, I just delete it, and block the person. And it kind of seems like people have stopped. But a couple of friends of mine, I mean, they'll show me screenshots of what they get, and I'm like, good lord. Like you draw cartoon characters. Who gives a shit? Like, why are they saying this to you? And it baffles me, but that's just the internet.
Speaking of bad people like that, but have you had like a client or someone who commissioned work for you that was really just difficult to work with?
I had one. I won't name names, but it was somebody a couple of months ago that asked me to do a series for him, and it was a couple of different characters. It was the Venom, the Spawn, that guy, and I don't think I tagged him anything, but so he wanted to do like a '90s kind of homage of characters. So he wanted to do Spider-Man, Venom, Spawn,
Was it Carnage
and
also?
no shit. What was the other one? Did Spider-Man, Venom, Spawn? Oh, animated Spider-Man and animated Venom from the '90s
Okay.
show. So we're going back and forth, and of course this is on direct message, and he's like, I like that kind of '90s vibe, and I'm like, okay, cool. '90s vibe to me is like the colors, the style, but he's like, that kind of Todd McFarlane style, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. And so like I try to clarify, like, look, if you're hiring me, you're not hiring Todd McFarlane. I'm not going to draw like Todd McFarlane. I can't knock off his style. That's his style, nor do I want to. I can
Correct.
add certain things to the character that might look like what Todd did. Like Todd is very famous for the quote unquote spaghetti webbing that Spider-Man does, where you see like knots and twists and shit. The way that I draw his webbing is the way that Todd popularized in the '90s, right? So
Okay.
so we're going back and forth, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I go, we can even sample some of Todd's colors from these characters. Like we can get a cover. I can sample the red. I can sample the blue, and we can apply them to Spider-Man and so forth. So the first one we did was Spider-Man, and his, Todd's version of Spider-Man had this big giant head, but he had a very strong jaw, lots of blacks, and his webbing on his suit was drawn really, really close together, and he had these big giant eyes. So I do a first pass, and I send it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, but more Todd McFarlane." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go and do it again, I do it again. It turns out, long story short, he basically was like, "Well, can't you just draw like him?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's what I meant." And I go, "Dude, when you say an homage is not a knockoff. You're asking me to duplicate somebody else's artwork. I don't really do that." And he's like, but that's what I asked you to do. And I'm like, no, that's not what you asked me to do.
You asked me to give you things similar.
Correct, like a 90s homage, Like if you look at the Spawn that I did, he wasn't familiar with Spawn, so he told me just go crazy. So I did my version of Spawn, which is kind of a combination of the movie, the cartoon, and the comic book series. But I colored him in those 90s versions, those colors, and he was cool with that. But like the Venom specifically, that guy was such a pain in the ass to deal with because he would approve something and then go back and go, can you change his entire mouth? And I'm like, no, because you approved it. And he's like, yeah, I thought you might say that. I'm like, well, yeah, because you approved it. And he's like, well, I approved it because I don't want to argue. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's not my problem, man. If you say this is done, it's done. And then he
Oh
would give me this whole
man.
spiel. And it got to a point where, like, I finished all the work and I said, look, you owe me X dollars. Pay me the money so I can send you your artwork. We don't have to work together. I don't really care. And he kind of gave me this, well, I'm not sure if I want to pay now because, you didn't. And I'm like, because I didn't knock off other artwork. And finally, we had to get into like, trust me, man, like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to be that guy that refuses to pay. He paid me, and we kind of just went our separate ways. Um, I don't think I would do anything for him again because, he just doesn't
Sound like a pain in the ass.
he just doesn't get it, and he plays the victim. But that's the most recent one where you're like, oh my god, this guy, come on. By and large, everybody's cool though, but you do get, yeah, it's absurd.
It's the draw me. It's practice for you.
Yeah, no. He told me, he goes, you know what? If you just want to scrap the idea, I just won't pay, and then you can just keep the artwork. And I'm like, and do what with it? Like, you know, what? I did this because you wanted me to. There's certain ways that people try to weasel out of shit.
I've seen it. I've seen different horror stories, not horror stories. That's a different podcast, but uh, where they I seen artists talk about how the difficult clients and shit like that. I mean, I've seen it even with photography industry when you're trying to get payment for a photo gig and they're like, well, I wasn't feeling good that day, or I was bloated that day, or whatever the excuse was. I was like, well, you should have told me, before we went out there and shot. I would have totally like rescheduled for you. I did the work, and that's what it is. Like right now, that's exactly what I'm trying to do is pain in the ass, trying to get a service contract agreement to protect myself and make sure that when I do decide to go full 100% into it, see, I'm the opposite of you. I tiptoe in the water a little bit.
Oh, I can't do that.
And so I decided to go 100% into it to where I can then finally have a contract. Here's a contract, here's a service agreement. We're not doing anything until I get the things that are listed in this contract, which essentially is going to be 50% of the work, down payment of that, and then here's what the legalities are. Here's how much time you have to cancel. You have much time to do that, and it's just a pain in the butt though because I'm having to work with what is the Rocket Lawyer or whatever the hell it is
Oh,
to
yeah.
help produce something that's meant for.
Yeah, but trust me, it'll pay off because when you can just give somebody something and everything's there and they just sign it, and whether they read it or not, it's not your problem.
Yep.
And then you have something to protect yourself. It's so much better because even if I have people sign things, I get pitched shit all the time about, hey, if you want to do free artwork for this, you sign this, and I'm like, no, I'm good. You know, you just you're gonna get a bunch of people trying to hustle you for free shit or trying to pay you half or whatever. And if you can just say, look, sign this and we're good, And then if they try to weasel out of it, be like, hey, reference your, your agreement. Most of the time they'll come around, but I don't know what it is, man. I don't know. People just, they want something and they realize they can't pay for it halfway through or whatever. I mean, I've had people pay me for something. I send them something back, like a first draft, and they never respond to me. I won't hear, like a guy earlier this year, he's like, I hired you 3 years ago. And I'm like, for what? And he tells me, and I'm like, it kind of sounds familiar. And I'm like, what happened? And he's like, something like I never heard back. And I went through my emails and I'm looking and I found the email to him and I sent it to him. And I'm like, bullshit, man, I sent you this, this, and this. Not only that, but I tagged you in a bunch of photos on Instagram and you commented on them. So you saw the work. And then when I asked you for your input, you just disappeared. You know what I mean? Like, and then I did kind of follow up multiple times and you never responded. And then he goes, well, yeah, but like I was in school and this and this and this. So
Here come the excuses.
I'd like my money back. And I'm like, you'd like your money back from 3 years ago? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. You can't just disappear on somebody and go, yeah, you know what? I want my money back. Like that was on you. You didn't live up to your end of the bargain, and it happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I changed my mind. Those 50 hours of work you put into already. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Just, it's experience under your belt.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with the 30 hours that I spent? Well, I'm sure you could sell it for something else. And I'm like, so now I kind of do like, I call them milestone payments. Like, let's say it's $1,000. Okay. So it's this much down. And then when I do the first sketch where I show you the placement or the size or this or that, then it's another payment. And then after that, I'll do the inks, I'll do everything. I'll do everything but final color. Then you approve it, then that's a payment. And then the final payment is done at the end when everything is done and you're happy. And usually people like that because it spaces something out, it's not a big chunk at once. And it kind of lets us like build trust. Like I give you something, you give me something. I give you something, you give me something. And I've seen over the past like 2-3 years that I've done that, it seems to work out a lot better. Rather than, well, you got to give me all up front,
I mean, I think that's in a lot of industries when it's like product or work being done sort of thing. I mean, that's the risk sort of type of thing where and it's unfortunate people back out like that. That's just that's a negative name on it because then you go, oh, this guy's gonna try to contact me again. You're like, yeah, I don't want to work with you anymore, man.
Fortunately, I can tell people like I'm not interested. Like the guy I told you about. He hasn't contacted me for anything else, but like I've kind of made up my mind. Like, no, I'm good. And other people that I worked with like last year, you just learn that either their business ethics are shitty or they're a shitty person. And I'm just like, I don't have to work with you. Even if you pay me like a good amount of money, is it really worth all of your bullshit? Probably not.
What sort of advice do you have for people who are considering to go on their own to start their own business? Not necessarily an artist or photographer or anything, but just their own business in general.
I've always liked the find something to be and go be it mentality. Doesn't matter if it's an artist or a photographer or a doctor or whatever. Find something to be and go be it. There's no. I get DMs from people sometimes, and they're like, "How do I do it?" And I'm like, "Man, there's no secret formula. You just do it." And you find out if you can or you can't, and if you can't, why can't you? It's because you don't want to do this, or you don't want to work, or you don't want to whatever. And if you do, then you'll find out that too. It's whether you can or you can't, you're always right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always liked the whole find something to be and go be it. There's no magic formula to,
Either jump in or don't jump in at all, type of thing
well, I
too.
mean,
So
it's like when people go, I'm gonna give it a shot, and failure is not an option. I'm like, that's bullshit. Failure is the most readily available option there is. If you don't
yep,
try, you fail.
yep.
You know, it is an option, and you have to understand that it's an option. But do you want it to be your option? Do you want to fail? If you do, what does that say about you? If you don't, what are you prepared to do? So, like with you, go do your rocket thing, rocket lawyer or whatever the fuck it is, and just do it. Like even with Jess, this is what I told you about with her soap. Like, stop overthinking it. Just do it. Oh, but what if this and what if that? Okay, pretend all that shit's gonna happen. It's all gonna happen. Now what? What if people say bad things about me? Who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm.
I draw fucking
It is
superheroes
gonna
for
happen.
money, and I get called terrible things. And I'm like, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had horrible shit happen to me, and I don't care anymore about like stupid, meaningless. Like, what if this person says something mean to me? Okay, pretend that like that's going to happen 100%. How are you gonna deal with it? Well,
It's got to
it's
push
gonna
forward,
make me,
man.
yeah. Just be like,
Yeah.
what my favorite thing is like when once in a while, I will get someone on Twitter or Instagram who's like, you know what, you fucking suck, and you're nothing but a piece of shit, and you're a hack, and I'm like, okay, and they're like, I'm unfollowing you, and I'm always like, that's fine. I don't even know who the fuck you are. So the fact that you told me you're unfollowing me is the only way I'm ever going to notice that. I don't even know who you are. So why would anything that you say to me like matter? You sought me out. You commented on my stuff. You whatever. You came to me every time. I don't even know your name. I don't know who you are. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
I mean, that just comes in the territory. You're a person who's producing your own content, and everyone's a critique out there, especially in social media. Everyone's a fucking expert on everything, from the coronavirus to politics to artwork to how to raise a kid to how to make the best spaghetti. It's just
Yeah. It's like I told my friend today, like not everybody is an artist, but everybody is a fucking critic.
yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, I couldn't tell you how to fucking draw anything, to be honest. I can't even draw this stupid S Superman thingy.
no, but if you did, it's not it's how you say it. It's like if you go, "Oh, maybe if you tried this over that." Okay, I'm not going to be like, "Oh God, you don't know anything." Like it's like, maybe he's right, but if you're like, uh technically that's wrong. It's like, "Okay, tell me why it's wrong." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you're going to say something, know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like if I told you how to build a house, I kind of know like a little bit, but could I tell you like no? So I just shut the fuck up.
That's structurally wrong. Use the wrong kind of wood and the wrong kind of drywall or whatever.
I mean, I can look up and be like, dude, that doesn't look safe. You might want to support that. I don't know with what. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But me trying to sit there and nitpick and like, you know, well, you should do this and you should do that. I'm like, then why don't you go do it? You can't. That's why you talk shit.
Yep. To tell you, people out there, social media keyboard warriors, criticizers, they're just pain in the rear. Pain in the
Well,
rear.
it's very simple. Those who can do, and those who can't talk shit online. It's very simple. Like whether you're an artist or a cook or a photographer or whatever, like the people that can do what you do or in your field are out there doing it. And then you guys can compare notes and you guys can become peers and learn from each other. And the people that don't do it or can't do it just talk shit online. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, whatever. Like I don't care. Like I have more important things.
And to worry about what
Yeah.
I keep telling people, it's in, I'm 30 something years. I don't care what a fucking 18-year-old's got to say about what I'm doing.
Dude, I don't care
I
what a
don't.
50-year-old says about what I'm doing. Like, it's not the age, it's the person. If you're 13 and you have something, like I get comments from like, hey, I'm a 13-year-old high school artist, and one of these days I want to do what you do, and I'll go look at their stuff, and it's like, look, he's 13 or she's 13. Like when I was 13, I was doing the same shit, and like, and what should I do? And I'm like, just keep putting your stuff out there. I don't care how old you are. If you tell me like that Spider-Man's really cool, like I had a guy tell me like, man, I really like this drawing, but I wish the colors were different. I don't take offense to that. I'm like, sometimes it's why I release those coloring pages. I'll do a black and white version so you can color it, you know. But if you go,
I remember
yeah,
those. Yeah.
yeah, but like your artwork, it's like I don't care, man.
Hmm.
Like if you want to pay me to destroy something that I do, that's fine.
uh, yep. You've heard it all, probably, right?
Yeah, I tore up everything that I purchased from your store. I'm like, I didn't tear up the money that you paid me.
I know. What is the purpose of that? Like, it's gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah, it's like
Is it
what's the
you
point?
paid me? I already got your money. You already paid me for my services rendered. So I don't. Who's losing here? Me? Because definitely not me. I think it's you.
I think that they're just trying to like, I don't know, hurt your feelings or whatever, and you're like, okay. I mean, that sounds like you have a temper, like maybe an anger problem,
Agreed.
but whatever, man. Whatever.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Um, again this week. So
Yeah, I
on
saw you like
different,
2 weeks ago.
yeah. But how can people? What's the best way that people get to you to get to your if they're interested in commissioning something from you?
Instagram or Twitter. I don't have Facebook. Um,
Average Joe Art, correct? Comment
yeah,
spelling.
same thing on Twitter and or Instagram. I don't have the TikTok. I don't do the Snapchat still a thing.
Yeah, it is.
Is it okay? I don't have that. I just Instagram and Twitter. That's all I have. I do like
Instagram.
watching TikTok videos though, like really weird ones. Oh, oh,
That's another
like
rabbit hole right there. That's another rabbit
I've
hole.
I've gone down the rabbit hole for like an hour or two watching really fucked up TikToks, and I don't even feel bad about it.
You know what?
Uh,
Jessica tells me the same thing. Her on Instagram, she goes down rabbit holes,
yeah, but she
and
takes that shit personally sometimes. I got to comment on this and this, and I'm like, for what?
makes her feel better. I don't know.
All right, whatever.
Well, thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate your time, my man.
All right,
Thank you
man.
so
I'll see
much for
you.
being part of my first episode here, and thanks again for helping me out with that logo. Really
Now
appreciate
we got
it.
to do your photography one.
That's the next one.
The one you have now, it just hurts my feelings.
I work so hard on it.
There's
I learned techniques on Illustrator.
you need a lot of training.
It's been 8 years since I've been to a class for that.
Google, man, YouTube.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it, man. And we'll talk again. All right, bud?
All right, I'll see you later.
All righty, dude.
All right, bye.
Bye.